Okay, so let's call the meeting to order. Today is, we got August, what is it?
Third.
3rd? August 3rd. Okay, 7 o'clock. It's finance committee, so.
If it's 7 o'clock, it's finance committee.
It is. All right, so we are ready for that. We're gonna be talking about the special town meeting. And pretty much that's what we're talking about the last few days and the articles.
Well, we should also go through the budget and see where we can help find some more money for firemen.
Sure.
Specifically, I'd like to address what departments are returning money to free cash and how often do they do it. And we'll see if those budgets can be amended to stop that from happening so that we'll have more money.
Well, we might have more money, but then we won't have free cash.
That's true.
It
Still
depends.
not making up any money.
Well, but it depends on how you define a balanced budget. Terry defines it as not dipping into free cash at the end.
Sure.
And so, by that definition, you've allocated the money in a more wise way, but then you won't have that much free cash at the end. So, if you're, it's like when you overpay on your federal taxes so you can get a tax return. That's kind of you'd rather not pay in the first place, if you can help it.
So to that end, you called me out this afternoon after I met with Congressman McGovern and asked for this information. I talked to the accountant. He put together a list of all the departments that are returning money and gave a 5-year look back and returned money and provided an average of 5 years. So unfortunately, the formatting for that presentation was off, and so
One of the nice things about being in this town.
Well, I understand that, but if you want no services, there is a nation which has no income tax and hardly any taxes whatsoever, and I don't think anyone wants to move from Hadley to Haiti. That's what you get when you have no taxes.
Nice weather and that's it?
Yeah, if you go to the Dominican Republic, I think you'll like it better. Same island.
Hispaniola.
Yeah. So, everyone regards taxes as, this super evil thing, but it's what protects your house in the case of a fire, and it's what protects your family when the police are required. It's what gets the snow off your roads in the wintertime. It's what gets the grass mowed and the town greens and keeps the water running. And it's, I don't think anybody would like to go it alone without services.
Dan, can I ask you, last night you had a sheet of paper with some numbers. If I asked, and I'm just going to look up this number, I'm not saying this is the number, I'm just going to say, if the override was $500,000, what would that add to?
Oh, it's 163.12.
163.12?
Yeah, the average about 163.
Okay. So 163
Basically,
dollars
On top of the 93 for if the Capitol buildings go through.
Yeah.
a good
So you're talking 250-ish.
estimate is divide the amount that you want by 3.
Oh, okay.
So 600 grand is going to be about $200.
I see.
Okay, that's
Give or
helpful.
take a couple
But that's a strong estimate.
capital, not a capital, a general debt exclusion, yeah.
Yeah.
This again is for the average household, or
Yeah, that's
that
for
same,
what
the
the
house
the
is
same,
313.
That's
Three
370.
something? Okay.
626, they're going to pay $400.
Yeah.
Thank you, Dan, that's helpful.
Right, the more it's a mill rate per 1,000 value property, right? So
Right.
if you have a big property, you pay more.
So the average property, what do we call the average property? Is it 300,000?
313.
313, is that?
And just because my head is not working with the math here, what percent increase is that on somebody's bill?
The average bill is, actually I have that right here.
I mean, I just wanna know exactly how much, pain we're causing here.
Did the original $95 that we said that was gonna kick in, did that kick in already?
No.
When does that hit? The next,
Well, let me do one thing at
oh,
a time.
sorry.
You're piling up on them.
Average tax bill is $3,629.
But that's average throughout, that's the big houses and the little houses.
Well, that's what the tax bill for a $313,700 value.
An annual.
Annual bill, yeah.
Really?
Yeah, so it'd be about 907 a quarter.
And
So about $750 a quarter.
is the assessment that much lower than the, book value of a house?
No. We're pretty close. In general, we're at about 90% right now, 92. We're revaluing, we're gonna probably be around 95 when we're done.
And Dan, you do a valuation every year.
Yeah, we have to look at the values every year now. It used to be every 3. DOR has changed it after this year to 5, but they require us for the last 6 years to look at it every year. And if it's off, if it's below 90 or above 100, we need to make adjustments.
I have to go back and look at my own tax bill, because it's not jiving with what you just said, but.
Well, I can tell you this is, we are doing a lot of, home equities and things like that. We use Zillow, and then we also use, the assessment, and then we then we do appraisals, and in Hadley's been pretty close.
Been pretty close, okay.
I haven't really seen anything really on that.
Okay, cool.
So how much historical data do we have on surrounding regions' tax rates? Because I think providing more context rather than just a flat dollar amount.
Yeah, I
Because
think
you
that's
can
important too.
contextualize it however you want in terms of what's $50 or $100. But when we see, quickly pulling it up, we're at 1086 on 1,000.
Should be 1157.
Oh, this is outdated.
Yeah, the
Yeah, it's an
tax
outdated
rate is
site,
really
You say 1157?
yeah, it's not really a good measuring stick. You would want to use average single-family bill,
Okay.
because our value at 313 is significantly higher than most communities, not Amherst. They're a little bit higher than we are, but their tax rate is 20-ish, I think.
So, Dan, I think all of that.
Aren't their houses more expensive than Amherst, because they're in Amherst?
Uh,
So their values are higher and their tax rate is higher, their taxes have
yeah,
to be
the
much.
tax bill in Amherst is about double what it is in Hadley.
Okay.
But if you look at, say, Northampton, their average value is probably 280. Or East Hampton, it's 230.
And what are their rates are?
And their rates are higher, but the average bill, I know Hadley and East Hampton, the average bill is really comparable, but their tax rate is 16.
So that has to do with the
Or
density of properties on the land?
It's just the desirability of the community.
Well, 'cause
Between Northampton and Amherst.
Well, like Cambridge, for example, which is highly desirable, has a low tax rate, but they have a gazillion properties. One city block in Cambridge is equal to all of Hadley in terms of numbers of property, right?
Yeah, you could, yeah.
They only got one
depends on-
street to plow in that case.
But the average, if you look at the average property value, I mean, if you wouldn't compare like to Cambridge, but we're comparable with a lot of communities. We're on the lower end, though.
Right, so I guess the point is that we're not overtaxed as we are, and we have a pretty good deal, so we're not out of line to ask for some more, so I think that's where
So
I'm
I'd like
at.
some historical context behind that to see how our rates, whether you do it on the 1,000 or versus the average single-family home price, have risen in comparison to surrounding communities.
Right.
Because if you see Hadley slowly growing over time, obviously it has been keeping the tax rate low. But if everyone else isn't spiking, then we can make the argument that, well, we can't keep offering comparable services if we keep at this trend.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense.
So that historical data is available at the Department of Revenue. What you're looking for under the Division of Local Services would be the tax recapitulation sheet.
Tax recapitulation sheet.
Yeah. and that would, you can call it up for any town, so you can do your own local survey. I have Hadley's for, and you probably have even more.
Yeah,
historical
I
data
ran
than
something a couple weeks ago. Of the 20 Hampshire County communities, our average single-family bill is 14
14th in the list.
from the top, yeah. So there's 6 lower than us and 13 higher. And using Hampshire and Franklin, we're 28th out of 46.
So we're well
So
below
we're
the
below
50%
below
at top.
half, yeah.
Was that the bill or the rate?
The tax bill. We're at 3630. Amherst is at 7305. So it's more than double.
Speaking of historical data, one of the things that shocked me was Amherst, I'm not beating up on Amherst, the Amherst town budget was $82 million. And I think the last time I looked at it, it was somewhere in the neighborhood of $30 million, or maybe I've got some other community in mind. But that number shocked me, just of growth, and I've seen that with other towns, just the growth in the annual budget is extraordinary when you compare it to Hadley. We haven't seen that kind of growth.
Well, I mean,
Such
Amherst
as-
is probably not a fair comparison because they have an
Belchertown.
enormous university sitting there.
Yeah, but Belchertown
Yeah.
would be,
A better comparison, or Hatfield maybe.
yeah.
Hatfield, their bill is just under 4,000. So it's almost $400 more than ours. And Belchertown is 4,600. So they're 1,000 more than we are.
So that was one of the things I was going to do, is just look at the area towns and just what's the growth of the budget over a 10-year period, because I think our budget has not matched the rate of acceleration of other towns. That's my impression. I'd like to see the data.
And Hadley is also unique in the fact that we're a small country town, and we have a huge commissary that runs back down the middle of it, which is a nice thing. And I actually would like to consider some more careful thought on a split tax rate. And we have brought this up before, and it kind of got summarily dismissed. I kind of want to go through the pros and cons of that at some point. It doesn't have to be tonight, but
Yeah, the split rate won't actually bring in more money.
well, I keep hearing that, but I don't understand why.
Think of it as you've got a pie or a cake, and right now the commercial is paying 1/3, residential is 2/3. If you expand that commercial portion, the residential portion shrinks.
Why does it shrink?
Because we have the levy limit
Bigger cake.
we are only allowed to have a pie so big.
Wait, I don't
By
understand the
state.
pie limitation here.
The levy limit, we can only raise a certain amount in taxes every year, according to DOR. That's our levy limit,
Well, but
which we're at the max that we can raise. So if we split the rate, if we bump commercial up, residential comes down.
so would you just stop drawing the pie for a second? I understand the concept of a pie. What I don't understand is why we can, if we can go to the town and ask for an override to raise taxes, why can't we go to the town and ask for an override to raise only commercial taxes?
Because that's illegal.
Lots of towns have split rates, though.
But they can't just say, we're gonna pass an override and raise commercial. Most of the communities that have split rates are at their maximum levy.
But what you could do is ask for an override at the same time that you change the ratio so that property owners would pay no more but still get the increased
Right, but
tax.
the rate is only in effect for 1 year. You have to vote the tax rate each year, whether to allocate in a split rate. So say you did that and the board says, okay, 3-2, we're gonna vote yes to split the rate. So you bump up commercial taxes by 20%. The next year, one of those people who voted yes gets replaced by somebody who says that's not fair. They vote no, and the residential taxes would go up by 10% in 1 year.
And yeah, then there would be people with pitchforks and torches out
Well,
front.
the opposite is when the commercial goes up, we would get flooded with real estate abatements on the commercial properties, which means we would need, which we've got an article on the special warrant for October. If we go to ATB on a big box or one of the malls, it's gonna cost an exceptional amount of money to have expert testimony, expert witnesses come in and value the property. One of the malls came in a couple of years ago and we were quoted north of 50,000 for an appraisal for the one property.
And that's not something you can do or your office can do?
We value the property. I could testify at the ATB how we value the property, but I'm not considered an expert for valuing the property to testify. And the other boxes, if you took out any of the freestanding large discount retailers, it costs 10 to 12 grand a piece for those. So it adds up really quick. Especially if you're bumping up, say 10% or 20%, if you go with a 10% shift and one of the malls goes up 30, 40 grand, they're gonna come in.
And I'm not sure, given how poorly brick and mortar businesses are doing right now, it's such a good idea to, stock it to them.
But we also provide services to them. For example, the firemen that we need to hire, part of the reason why we have to hire them is because we have to protect those buildings and we have the heavy traffic congestion causing accidents and so on and so forth. So all of that stuff costs money. And it's, if you ask the chief what percentage of his calls are on that length of road from the bridge to UMass versus the rest of what he does in the rest of the town, what do you think he's going to say? And throw the police chief in there too.
I'm not advocating for commercial or big box, but American Farmland Trust does a study every couple of years on the cost of what a property pays versus what they use in services. And commercial on average uses about 30 cents of what they pay in services. Residential uses about $1.10.
Because they're not doing a lot of
Because there's no
schools and
schools. They don't put kids in the school system, which is half of our budget. And they're looking out, when this study is done, they're looking at it from a point of, to prove that farmland and open space doesn't use as much services, and they're actually
A
ahead
farm
of
doesn't
commercial.
put kids in school either. I mean, the farmer might put some kids in school, but
Right.
per acre, farms don't put in more children than.
Right, but what they look at is the farmland typically is in chapter land and receives a huge discount. So they actually get more in services for what they pay per dollar than commercial property does. I mean, I'm not saying.
No, I want to get, I don't know these things, so I want to know them, so that's fine. I'm happy that you're, telling us these things.
Dan, I think you sent around the most recent tax classification analysis.
Yeah, the split rate, or the classification here report we had for fiscal 17.
Can I ask one more split rate question?
Yeah.
Is there a comparable town that has a split rate, and how does it work for them?
Montague.
Montague.
Montague, actually I ran some quick numbers this morning. Now this is Hampshire Franklin only. Irving and Montague are probably the closest to us. In value-wise, we're more than both of those. Montague has a 30% shift, and Irving has a 6% shift.
And do either of those places have big box stores, Whole Foods and Trader Joe's and all that kind of stuff?
Irving and Montague, I believe, is industrial.
And do they have to vote it every year?
They have to vote every year. Once you vote it in, the only way, you really have to just keep upping the percentage. So if you start out at 10, the next year you might go 11. 2 years later, you might go 12. And a lot of the bigger communities in Camden County are at the 150%. It used to be 175, but they rolled that back.
So it's, the commercial pays 1.5 times.
We pay 1.5 times what they would if we had a single rate. I believe Holyoke and Springfield are both close to $40 for their commercial tax rate.
Montague is successful because they have worked all their planning out to a T. So they provide a lot of tax incentives for businesses to expand. They have a number of planning tools that are not available to us because they're in the Franklin County economic target area. We are not. They're able to offer tax incremental financing as well as a number of other incentives. So they make that split rate work in a very sophisticated way by carrot and stick, basically. We're not able to do that
Just because of our location?
just because of where we are.
Yeah, 2/3 of Montague's commercial value is industrial. And Irving, 85% of their total value is industrial. So they're rather unique.
What do those folks make up there?
I have no clue.
Doesn't Northeast Utility cover a whole lot of Irving for tax? When we went to the new senior center up there, their tax rate is really low because everything's covered by Northeast Utilities.
Yeah, the residential rate is $6.96
That's why, because they get this huge influx.
with an average bill of $1,289.
They have that mountain that they've hollowed out and they fill it up with water and then drain it out to make electricity. That's their tax base.
Wait, so they fill it up
They
at
fill-
night and then they drain it during the
They
day?
fill it up when energy is cheap and they drain it out to make electricity when the energy is expensive. They do it every day.
So electricity is more expensive during the day or
No,
something?
you can't store electricity, so that's when they use the turbines and pump it up to the hole they made in the top. And then when they need more, they reverse it and it comes down and makes energy.
Right, but they said that they do it daily, so that means there must be
Pretty much.
some portion of the day that's more expensive than some other portion. And so at the cheap rate, they pump it up,
Yeah.
and at the expensive rate, they let it drain down,
Yeah,
and they're day traders essentially.
yeah.
I want a mountain too.
They have over 750 million in industrial and personal property.
Wow,
in Irving, out of 881 total.
that's pretty interesting.
So they don't have a lot
What's
of.
the highest point in Hadley?
The Mount Skinner.
All right, well, I guess we're not doing that, huh?
Not
So you want a
much.
pump?
Marlo may object to this new project. Marlo, get out there and start pumping the water up.
Start hollowing out a mountain.
Start pulling out the mountain. Oh my goodness, all
So
right.
get back to where we were with this, with the increase. Now, we talked about the increase of 500,000, what that would be, would we say $161, something like
Yeah.
that? But I was wondering, so the original 95, that's gonna take place when?
That should be this fiscal year. The 95 was an increase over fiscal 17 rates, so which bill does it kick? It didn't-
Yeah, it's not on there yet. It'll get added into the third quarter that goes out in December.
That goes out in
And then the
December.
normal increase that we have every year, the 2.5% bump up, will get added in for third and fourth quarters as well
In December.
in December. And then any override, general override,
The one that we were just talking
The
about,
one
will
that you're
that go in
talking
December
about.
too?
If you have town meeting in October and have a general override in November, it would be timely enough to allow it to be added to the recap in
Okay.
December.
And then how about these articles that were increased, that if they pass, that will increase on the new?
I don't think you'd be borrowing anything in 17 on those, would you? Anything new, or let me rephrase that.
Yeah.
You wouldn't be making any payments in 17.
No, it would not change anything in 18.
Okay.
Or, yeah, that's what I
Yeah,
meant. Fiscal-
yeah, I know.
Yeah,
It
there wouldn't
wouldn't
be any
change the
payments
current.
made in 18, so it wouldn't add
Yeah.
in.
You've seen that.
What's
Yeah.
paid this year is based on what we borrowed in June. And
Yeah.
we'll borrow
So
again.
wouldn't,
Anything we
that
borrow
increase
from
would be
now
taken
on.
until the next fiscal year.
Right,
Okay,
right.
that's better.
So it wouldn't show up until December of.
So,
Because you don't want a December bill to come and everyone have like,
so it'll go up incrementally. But you're talking about if everything went through plus this 500K, you're talking about 260 to 280 increase total.
It's different.
It has to be said because people will remember 500,000. And that's a number I just made up off the top of my head for
Sure.
illustration. That's not
You
necessarily.
better illustrate less than.
right, but I mean, so we can go with higher or lower, but
Right.
that's a good number because we know 250 of that would be right away.
For the fire
For the
department.
fire, and if we wanted to do anything else, so.
Mhm.
It's just, it's a lot to go up in one time, you know, and it seemed
Well,
like.
but it wouldn't be, it would be just burst over 2 years essentially.
Well, the general override of the 95 would get added in, and then the 2.5% is probably 80 to 100 typically. So you'd be looking at probably 350 to 175 a quarter for the average house if you went with 5.
So it's not a small amount, but it's not an enormous amount either.
I mean, if you point out the buildings they're doing, that's, you know, it's not like we're just using this, as Linda used as an example. We have our mortgage and we have our dining out. One of them you have to pay, and the other is discretionary. And the discretionary one is a different part than the,
Well, my wife will tell you that you don't have to dine out.
well, there's that, but you still need groceries.
Indeed, but you can be more economical at the grocery store than you can be at Alina's or some other restaurant.
Well, that's
With
choices.
our services now going by. All right, so I think that one of the things I'd like to put on the agenda for next meeting, because we still have a whole agenda to do on this meeting, but if it's all right with you, I'd like David to finish preparing that business with the who's giving money back and who's not, and who's actually always under budget. I like to know both sides, right? If somebody's always under budget, find out why that particular department's always under budget, what departments are always over budget, and see if we can shuffle the deck a little bit there. And I'd like to go through the entire budget again, line by line, and see, you know, and ask questions and ask those departments to justify why they like that. We may have to ask folks to take, you know, a small % haircut across the board in order to fund the fire department. Because at the end of the day, we still have the same problem that we've always had. You can talk about an override, but if it doesn't get voted, you have to have a plan B, which, you know, is what's going to happen if the override isn't approved. Right, so that's, you know, we've talked about, if we put all our eggs in plan A and then the town says no to plan A, then we have to know what we're going to
I
do for
think we
plan
can
B.
look at it, but then down the road, the departments, I think maybe sometimes it's the organization of, and how they're, maybe they could come up with a way to,
Well, if, yes,
Combine.
you know, if they're on notice that they need to tighten up, maybe they have some suggestions on things that could run better, or they could do something in a different way, or they could share resources, or what have you. They know their jobs best, so we should definitely get their input, and see where we can go with that. See if we can come up with some more money. I would also recommend to the select board that the town has a moratorium on hiring until we get those firemen hired. No one gets hired until firemen get hired.
That might be a little dangerous if it's a blanket.
Well, at all times, the select board would always have the option of making a decision on the fly. I mean, if a key person disappeared for whatever reason.
If you've got, there's a lot of departments in this building that have one person in them.
Right, and
And
so
if
in
that
the case,
person leaves, then it could
in
cripple
that
the
case,
town.
the select board would have to make a decision on that. Obviously, the baseline should be no hiring until such time as the firemen get hired. But obviously, the select board would always have the option of saying, okay, there's a one-person department, now that department disappeared, you have to do something about it.
Title it essential.
Yeah, you do essential.
Unfortunately, I
The
think
select board decides who's
a
essential.
lot of the personnel that's left, or everybody that's left, is pretty much deemed essential at this point. We haven't seen increases since
Well,
late 80s in departments.
I understand that. But right now, we're in a situation where we can't fight a fire adequately. And it's dangerous for the firefighters and dangerous for the people of the town. And it has to be addressed. And yes, the best case scenario and the thing I would vote for in an instant, and I would recommend that people vote for, is an override so that we can get our rate, our income up to a level where we can have our cake and eat it too. But right now, there's no cake. And people have to understand that.
I actually would look at it the other way. I mean, if we're talking about putting a freeze on all non-essential, in quotes, personnel, if we could even identify which departments might even have non-essential personnel, that's who we'd be talking about cutting down right now. I think we have trimmed it down. There's been no staffing increases since the 80s, apparently. So,
Which I also understand is not the proper thing to do.
Well, there's a few departments that have had increases, but in general, nothing's really shifted a whole lot.
No, I understand
Other
that. I
than
understand the
Public
injustice of
safety
it.
in schools and DPW. Those are the big movers.
Yeah.
So, public safety, DPW is, I know the school is half of the budget. What do those two take out of the rest of the half, the other half? What percentage?
David, do you have a book for that?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the
Is
question.
that a repeat question?
If the town budget, if half of it is taken up by the school board, or the school department, the other half, what percentage of that is made up by DPW and public safety?
Of the gross salaries?
Yes.
Was it, roughly the town side of the budget is 1/3 DPW, 1/3 public safety, or and 1/3 everybody else.
That's what I was looking for.
Everybody else, which is town hall.
Wait, you said 1/3 DPW, 1/3 schools,
Public safety.
public safety?
No, the schools are out of it.
Oh,
Of
what's
the
left
town,
of the half,
yeah.
okay.
It's about a third, a third, a third. Public safety, DPW.
So
and
it's
then
half, 1/6, 1/6, 1/6.
all other services, or all services.
And all our public safety, though, most of it's on police. It's
Right, we're heavily
That-
loaded
that's
towards
right.
the police department.
That's right.
Right.
Right, I would say probably that third is pretty much.
And that is something because we don't, it would, if we were to do anything different, it would cost us more money because we'd have overtime.
If you're talking about people,
Right, I mean, that's why that's why we hired the extra.
To hold
cut
down.
the overtime.
Oh, in
Right.
police,
And the police.
yeah, yes. And that
and
seems,
but what about other
seems to be
things like,
working.
Yeah.
like equipment sort of things? Like, are we carrying any kind of capital equipment that we really don't need? Like fire trucks, police cars, all that kind of stuff.
But how would that help our operating budget?
Well,
Unless you sell
I'm
it.
just, well, you either sell it or transfer it to a department that needs it more than the current department.
Yeah, the DPW has done a lot in terms of cleaning up the junked vehicles and surplus vehicles. We combined 2 trucks into one with the fire department. There's some debate as to whether we can get rid of them. Yet another truck. Chief says no, I say probably good. Cruisers, I think that there's 2 coming offline.
I don't know whether there's 2 coming off. I know there's 2 there's 2 going on.
Yeah, I
So-
think 2 are coming out.
We were steadily climbing ahead, but I think at that point it was supposed to be whatever goes on comes off.
Perhaps we can ask
Yeah.
Chief
Right,
Mason
but there are
to,
answers.
what, if there's something he can manage to live without. Because
Right.
all those cars have
Yeah.
to be insured,
I know that,
fueled, repaired.
Yeah.
wasn't Susan Lewatsky did a review of that at one point and to get some off, isn't that part of what she did
Yeah,
within the last couple of years?
So the police management study recommended reductions, fire management study recommended reductions.
Yeah.
On our own, we did a bunch of reducing at DPW, got rid of those horrible street sweepers.
Yeah.
That were costing us $1 million. That's an exaggeration.
So in the process of reviewing insurance,
Yeah.
Right, yeah,
Yeah.
because that's
That-
probably the biggest
because
cost
that's
of a
what she was
vehicle. I imagine a police car has much higher insurance than your average person's car.
No, you'd be surprised. You get a very good rate.
Maybe I should drive a police car then. But I imagine police cars get into snafus more often.
Yeah, so you need specialized certification and to work on the brakes for a police cruiser, for example, so the repairs are more expensive. It's not something you can take down to the local shop. Same with the trucks, fire trucks, they have to be repaired by certified mechanics with certified facilities, so.
One of the firemen that we're getting, the new one this time, is also the mechanic that can help work on that, correct?
Right.
But he's not gonna like change the brakes on the truck. They don't have a lift that can lift one of those trucks, I assume.
Yeah, so there's no lift, and that's something that we're talking about with the DPW director, is maybe upgrading the lift, and about a $40,000 item. We were thinking that we could pay for it through Chapter 90, but that's not going to work out, so we're still scratching our heads on that. But that would, specialized lift, you could get anything up in the air and be able to work on it in a more safe manner.
All right, so can we have those things on the
Yep.
docket for next time?
Yes, please.
Okay.
You wanna go into whatever, we're still at number one here?
Well, we're just pretty much going over let's do the special town meeting. That's what we're supposed to be going over, this the articles.
Right, so we voted on that last time. What's left to do on that?
So you have two warrants here, the August 29th meeting. So the select board decided to keep August 29th as the date. You've made your recommendations. I've listed those in the printable version of this. I guess there's some question as to when we should have the ballot votes associated with the August 29th one.
So what's required by law?
35 days to notify the register of the voters. So that takes us up to about October 3rd. And then you have to have the vote within 90 days of the gavel falling. So that takes you to about November 27th. Yeah, 27th, last Monday in November. So somewhere between the first Monday in October and the last Monday in November, that's when you take your
And is it,
ballot vote.
do you think it's more advantageous to load it to the front or load it to the back at that time?
Well, I guess the question is whether you want to have two ballot votes or one ballot vote, because you're going to have an October town meeting, which has got, at a minimum, it's got a $400,000 item on it that you're going to have to borrow,
Okay, so how much does it cost to have a vote?
about $2,500.
So I'd suggest we should go gang them together.
Yeah.
Go ahead, yeah.
I would point out that the time it's costing the senior center to wait the 6 months that we've had a delay because of our cost overrides was, the OPM estimated that's like $12,500 a month. And I proposed to David that we would be happy to put $2,500 out of our senior center budget to pay that cost, which would save us $10,000.
It's also the cost of, the intangible cost of asking people to come out twice. They come out, they do it all at once. I mean, I don't what people feel about, how people feel about that.
It's hard to believe that it's 12,000, that's so much. That seems like a large amount.
It's,
A month? 12,000 a month?
On a multi-million-dollar project.
Yeah.
Yeah, but there's an upper cap on that amount, isn't there, Jane?
in terms of,
You signed a contract for a total sum.
it's an escalation cost in terms of builders, I think is where he was coming from. That cost of construction continues to rise at 3% a year, and that's where he got that number.
So it's not the cost of the OPM, it's the
No,
cost of
it's the cost of the
construction.
actual construction.
And that's been steady forever and ever, 3% per year?
That's what the OPM says. I don't do these numbers very often.
The other option is if you know what you're gonna, I'm assuming the fall town meeting with the debt, if you're gonna have debt exclusions or a general override, if you know how much you're gonna have, you can always have that in advance of the town meeting.
That's true.
Because if you do that, the way you were talking last night with option A and option B, you go option A and you have an override in November, that's it, it's done. You can't go back and cut budgets to fund for 18. You'd have to look at 19 for that.
Well, but if we,
Because we wouldn't be able to get our tax recap in December, which allows us to get bills out, which means the bills that would be due February 1 are now due May 1, and you lose, you can't charge any interest on late payments
oh,
until
something aren't
after.
late, right?
It's not late till after May 1st, and people, when they know they don't have to pay, typically don't pay. So we lose
Well, yeah.
interest money coming in.
That's right.
But if you know, you could have a vote before town meeting. But it's getting,
So you
We're only
can,
2
you can
months
ask
out.
you can have the ballot before you actually have the town meeting, so it could pass the ballot and fail the town meeting. Then what happens?
Contingency.
well, if you did a general override and it passes at the polls, the money's still there.
So it doesn't really matter what
It
happens.
doesn't matter what happens at town meeting, the money's there if they say we're not gonna do fire, because general is different than a debt exclusion. So you could say we want 225 for fire, and you put that through and it passes and you put the fire in, next year you can do away with them. Not that I'm saying you're going to, but, and you could use that money somewhere else.
So once any override passes, whatever argument you made to get the people
Yeah.
to vote for it doesn't matter anymore.
Yeah, and you.
It just becomes part of the general
Right,
fund,
and
period.
a general, you can't treat it as a debt exclusion, so you can't have like a menu style. You can list, say you want 4 different amounts, 250, 5, 750, and $1 million. Whichever one is the highest one that passes is what you get. But you couldn't put fire, IT, HR, school. You can't list them separately.
That's by some state law.
State law, yeah.
But how that's worded, can we still have ample description to say if we only get the bare minimum, of course it'll be going to fire? I mean, well,
Well, we can say fire is our priority, right?
You would say that that's the priority, yeah. And then by doing it before town, if you did it after town meeting, it's an all or nothing. Because everything would pass at town meeting contingent on an override.
So I guess I'm trying to understand the value of town meeting if the ballot's really, it sounds like the ballot's
The
the thing
ballot,
that's
for the
that
general
really
override, the ballot is
is the thing.
Is the thing.
Town meeting allocates the funds, though. You have to spend them.
Yeah.
So we take the money in with a ballot, but we haven't, you can't spend it unless.
Oh,
the
so it's town meeting where you have your menu.
Town meeting
Well,
would decide
you have
how
your
the
budget.
money is spent, right? Based on the select board and the finance committee's recommendations.
So we should ask the select board what their opinion is on that, if they would want to do it in that order.
Mhm. They're
For this-
meeting next week, yeah.
Yeah. Is there an official way for us to make a request of the select board via this mechanism? Like, could we say,
Yeah.
David, could you please ask the select board
Well,
X
I've sort of
officially?
already done that by putting into, last night's meeting, I had an agenda item that talked about the timing of the town meeting vote, and we didn't get to it. So I said, okay, you don't get it in one meeting, you put it on the next one, so that's kind of there already. I'm sort of working on when you want.
And their next meeting is next week?
Yep.
Okay. Well, maybe we should see if we can raise that on their agenda for next week.
I think we have to, because this is a strategy that should be coordinated.
And is it, maybe, can you and Dan get together and put together a paragraph on the benefits, pros and cons of that strategy versus the vote afterwards, so that there's something for people to read?
Yeah.
I'm happy to do it. Are you around next week?
I'm on vacation next week, but I can
So
spend
we
some
have
time
to do it
tomorrow.
tomorrow. Okay, thank you.
Because it'd be nice to have a piece of paper here that we can hand out to people and that people can read on the internet, and what have you.
And that said, do we have an update on getting Mr. Pooler out here?
I am playing phone tag with him, so I don't have a copy ready for that.
So feel free to stab me with a pen if you want me to shut up.
Yeah, just fine.
I look like Caesar.
Eat you, Ute. All right, so that takes care of that set of articles, since we already voted on them, and now we're
I
talking
do
about.
have questions on a couple of them.
Go ahead.
There we go. On Article 2, and I have a question on Article 3. Article 2, it's 400,000.
Right, that's for the
And
land.
right, and I remember Jerry had brought up and we talked about it, but I don't remember what the outcome was for the closing costs.
Yeah.
What did we decide to do on that?
Well, nobody made a decision, so it would normally come out of our legal budget.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, and in addition to that, has anyone got the results back for the borings on that property?
Borings are gonna happen on Monday,
And how long does it take them to crank out a report?
2 weeks.
Good day.
Yeah.
Any other question on?
So, but it's, so, yeah, so it is too late to change, to increase that number.
You can increase it,
We can increase it.
yeah.
We have to re-vote on it?
Well, the thing is, we seem to, do we want to take the legal, the closing costs out of legal fees, considering I thought we really trimmed down the legal fees to what you felt comfortable with?
Mhm.
Would you feel comfortable with taking so much out of legal fees?
It probably makes sense to bake it into here.
How much but do we know how much it even is?
Uh,
Presumably some lawyer gets paid to do the closing and the title search and all that mess.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think these things are very expensive.
No, I mean, but I don't think it would make a difference whether it passed or not if you make that 410 and then you're not gonna spend.
If you don't spend it, you just borrow it, you just bring it back,
and
just
there
like
it
the
is,
others.
So you think 410 would be safe, 10,000?
10,000
I don't know.
sounds
Small.
Wait, really?
very generous.
Oh, yes, it is.
Yeah, so that's a safe number, 410,
Yeah,
Is 405 a safe number?
most likely.
yeah. Why didn't you can make a couple phone calls tomorrow?
Yeah.
Find out, right?
Yeah.
Closing costs and find out. I happen to know someone in the field, so. See what it works.
All right, well, I mean, it sounds like it's a small amount compared to the total anyway.
But Amy's right, if you're looking for every 5 or
Right.
10 out of the budget, and then you're
No, I agree.
now allocating part of the budget to it, and this is gonna be borrowed, maybe.
And if we don't use it,
It's a good
it's not.
point. Yeah.
Right.
It's no harm.
And borrowing 405 versus borrowing 400 is,
No, it's not a problem.
Since this parcel is in chapter as well, there'll be a rollback tax.
oh, so you're
And
gonna
I think it's about, they'll pay the last 5 years taxes, of what they saved. I believe it's around 13,000.
oh, so
Oh,
maybe we can just leave it the way it
It would end
is.
up being a,
You're gonna get
well,
that.
it would come in, but you'd have to spend it this year, and it comes in, so it gets lumped into free cash for 2019.
Well, either way, I mean, it's a small amount no matter how you slice it, so.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I just think it's, especially if you need it, it's better to have it and then just give it back. Or just like
I
you have
agree with
with.
that, I agree with that.
Okay, so I'll change this to 405.
You're gonna be, it looks like Article 4, you are gonna probably be changing too,
That's
the
right.
dollar amount, because that's,
They asked for a little more.
right?
Yeah, I keep on going to the library and saying, tell me what the number is. I think we were hearing 3.8. Do you have the
yeah,
number?
actually Karen Hurley stopped in this afternoon, they're still waiting on that kind of information, I hope they can have it in the next couple of days. They're doing the best they can, but they're hoping,
We got to post next Wednesday.
I know,
so-
I know.
Well, so where did this number come from? Because I see a large number of significant figures here. How did they come, where did this $11 come from at the end here?
They came right out of their capital plan.
What are you laughing at? Well, because you can say I want 3.5 million, but when you say I want $3,543,011.00,
There's no pennies.
sounds like you had a
Exactly.
notion. Sounds like you knew something when you picked that number. 3.5 million. I used to be a teacher of science.
Yeah.
Too many significant figures.
The other question on Article 3 was, we talked a lot about this yesterday with Donald's point of pushing, not pushing that off. And I agree with what he was saying, but I'm not sure how that all works. Is that something, how is that presented? Is that just, we leave this as is and then he presents that at town meeting, or how do you?
So there's a number of different ways of doing it, that you could just take it off the, you, the select board, would take it off the warrant, and it's not gonna be even presented because the project is on hold.
So then Article 3 would just be passed over at town meeting?
Well, that would be the other way, is keep it into the warrant, and then when we got to it at town meeting, we said, listen, we're just gonna pass over it. Is there any objection to passing over it? And if there is, you have a debate. If there isn't, then you pass over.
And that just places it on hold, because
Yeah.
they already voted yes for putting a fire substation there. I didn't know if we have to vote to put a hold.
Well, you're gonna have to repurpose the money for the 2.9. Okay, so the 2.9 for a fire substation was specifically tied to the ball field.
Right,
So if you're gonna spend that 2.9 on some other property,
right,
you have to
vote.
amend that vote that was taken.
okay.
And in fact, when we get to the October town meeting, you'll find that article, therefore, that repurposing of the money.
Hmm. Okay, so then we'll wait to see, and then the select board will probably be the ones to bring that up if we're gonna do the Passover.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, that sounds good. Those were my only questions.
And now we want to move on to the October, is that what?
Yeah, probably be helpful if I just walked through it. We didn't spend any time on it whatsoever.
I know this is, in fact, it says draft 2 here, and I haven't seen any of this yet.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
this
guess
is-
we have one.
This is draft 2, just make sure that you
Oh.
have draft 2.
Oh, okay. That's good.
All right, this was revised based upon the conversation with the select board last night. So I'm just gonna run through the articles very quickly, and then we can go back and take a look at it. All right, Article 1 would be the omnibus budget adjustment. So this is where we make the adjustment for whatever reason that we want to, including the 3 positions for the fire department.
And there,
If you look at budget number 220, you'll see the COLA plus 3 positions.
oh, okay, plus 3 positions. There's no number here, so,
Yeah.
okay. There's no number of really any of these except a few.
I will tighten all of this up, so if they, the warrant just closed last night. Haven't had enough time. This is also the time when we'd be using free cash, so for whatever purpose that we need to. So Article 2, this is the assessors, appellate fees. Dan, you gave me a figure of 60,000.
Yeah, we went over this at our meeting earlier this week. In the past, we've asked for money, and it's basically hasn't even hit town meeting. We're feeling that we're gonna get hit with a lot of commercial large box abatements this year. Most of it,
In spite of the fact that we're not splitting the tax rate?
if we split, it'll be increased, but the income and expense questionnaires that we send out, typically we get them back in from the big box through regular mail. Now they're coming back certified return receipt or FedEx, UPS, which means they're showing proof of delivery. So they plan on possibly going to the state.
Can you give us a timeline on that? What does that look like?
They would appeal bills that go out the end of December and January. We have 3 months to act on those, so you're looking at probably May is when we would finish that, and then they would have a couple months they have 90 days from when we decide, make our decision to file with the ATV.
Okay.
This is something that could potentially be put off if there's a special before the annual in May, because we would know at that point who filed and who's likely to go beyond.
All right, let's move on. Article 3, this is a housekeeping matter. This is where the old articles that are now, they've completed their purpose. There's a little bit of a balance left. We're going to return that balance back to the fund that originally funded the project. And then the next box down.
This is all going back to pre-K, I think. I mean, it's not.
The last column shows where it's going back to.
Oh, I see. What this one here with all the lines, water tank?
No, that was, they said that they actually still need that, so the last minute.
Oh, so they.
We've done the borrowing, we don't need to carry the full amount of the authorized debt, so we're amending the authorized debt back to the amount that we actually spent. You will notice the enormous savings that we were able to realize on the Route 9 water line. $200,000 of money we didn't have to borrow.
Okay. And it says police cruisers, borrowing not 90,000. That's, they bought police cruisers?
Yep.
How many police cruisers does one get for 90,000? Two?
All right, Article 4 is something that is the Department of Revenue wants us to do. We typically vote revolving funds at every annual town meeting. This is a way of providing a service without using taxpayer money. And under the old rules, you had to vote it at every annual meeting. Now, the Department of Revenue wants us to have this as a bylaw. So this is an article based upon the last town meeting we had, an article that creates a bylaw for authorizing revolving funds. So we would only be voting off revolving funds if there's some sort of substantial change to what we want to do.
Can I go back to the police cruisers for
Sure.
a second? Because earlier I asked, how much equipment, is there any equipment sort of languishing around?
Yeah.
But it looks like they just bought 2 police cruisers, so
Right.
presumably they thought they needed them.
Right. So they go through, police cruiser has a road life of about 3 to 5 years, and 5 is really pushing it. So what we have set up is we buy one year, we buy 2 the next year, we buy one year, then 2 the next.
And then the older ones get sold and...
The older ones are traded in, or they are given to another department, or they're kept as parts cars, depending on what's in the best interest of the town.
They also, David, that was wasn't there $3,000 last year that they did buy a couple of surplus cruisers. So they are always on the look to see what we can get in surplus, which
Well, I always buy my
each of
cars,
those-
1 year used if I possibly
Yeah.
can.
Yeah, so they do keep an eye out and save us money when we can. But this article also explains what you were asking about, if we don't spend that 405, whatever, this is the article that cures we didn't borrow everything, but we have to get it off the books. So that's where
That's what this is?
That's where that's the cleanup. The second part of that is these are amounts, we voted, the town voted 90,000 on cruisers, and then the bill came in, and then we've got that extra amount that we can either borrow and pay back, or we just choose not to borrow it, which saves us an interest. So we have that, this is a regular cleanup article that we now put on.
Could you borrow it and have it for a
Where's
different
5?
purpose then?
Where's Article
No.
5?
Article 5 is going to be on page
Yeah, you
6.
can't take the water lines at the police, at the fire.
It says explanation.
Sort of Legal event.
Oh, Article 5.
Doesn't work that way.
Trying to be creative. really.
Okay, so Article 5 is the transfer of free cash into stabilization, so whatever free cash is not used in the prior articles is going to be then transferred into stabilization or used into capital stabilization, special capital stabilization account. And then from capital stabilization, get into Article 6.
Well, hang on a second. So, presumably, if there's some amount of free cash left that's after all the other bills are paid, then we can go ahead and use some of that for our fire department for this particular
That's right.
fiscal year.
That's right. So it may be that we don't have any free cash after we've used it for the fire department.
So when, you said sometime next month we'll know about?
Mid-August.
Mid-August, well, so a couple weeks.
Yeah. All right, the capital article is the next page, and I just did a rip and read from the capital plan, and Gabriel, I'll be using that on Monday. But we have about $744,000 worth of projects, and this is an initial thought about where we're going to get the money to do this. Article 7, this is something that was discussed last night, to dissolve the Park and Rec Commission. Article 8 is an insurance article. If the August town meeting doesn't approve the senior center, then this is back for reconsideration. Same with Article 9.
Well, what, so if something doesn't pass at town meeting, you can just keep coming back and back and back again until such time as you wear the people down?
Yep.
9 times to get an elementary school.
So basically, they've got 2 bites of the apple here.
Or as many bites as they want. You said there was 9 bites at the elementary school apple. So you can just, forever? I mean, you can just keep doing that forever.
I suppose you can.
David's pupils just dilated. For those of you in the back.
It's a democracy, what can I say?
Well, Library failed the first time, and they put it on again, and it passed.
Yeah.
They've got enough people there.
Article
So
9 is
presumably
delivery.
overrides can be in the same way?
Yep.
Here you get a town meeting.
Okay.
So Article 9 is for the library. This is our second bite of the apple. Article 10 is the first of the 2 fire substation articles. Article 10 would repurpose that $2.9 million away from the ball field to any other parcel.
Okay.
Okay, so that frees up that money. Article 11 is the second bite of the apple for the fire substation overrun. Article 12, this is the article to withdraw from the Hampshire Council of Governments.
All right, let me stop you there for
Sure.
a second. So this has been talked about back and forth, and then it kind of went quiet for a little while, and now it's back up again, apparently, because it's right here.
This front page.
Has there been some sort of analysis, pros and cons of doing this, and where we would go if we didn't do the HCOG?
I think the major concern is the most recent audit that came out of the
It was
HCOG.
dismal.
Yeah, and are we in a position to say that we're better served by not being connected with a regional agency, which has real problems in terms of its solvency?
Yeah, well, that part I get, but the part I don't get is, there was talk about going to the Franklin COG,
Yeah.
and there were some questions brought up about whether we could even actually do that or not.
Yeah.
And I was wondering if anyone actually checked with someone to find out if this could actually happen.
Yeah, so I had a hallway conversation with Linda Dunleavy, the executive director of Franklin Regional Council of Governments, and she expressed interest in having Hadley participate in their services. I know that Amherst benefits from the FERCog.
Oh, they do?
Yes.
So the fact that you're not in Franklin County doesn't disqualify you as precedent. Amherst is in it.
It's not automatically, no.
Okay. And they would be willing to have us participate?
Well, they're willing to talk to us.
Well, so
I mean,
I never quit a thing before I had the next thing.
right,
You know, you never quit a job before you have an offer for another job.
I understand.
So if,
So at the select board meeting last night, the direction was given to David, or a request was made of David.
must have been
And
after
we
I
reached out to the
departed.
FERCog for exactly that purpose.
Oh, okay, so I missed that.
Yeah, I think it was right after you left. Right, Dave?
Article 13, this is the OPEB liability trust fund. This comes out of the Municipal Modernization Act. This is under review, under active review. Right now, we don't know if this is the right time for this or not.
Oh. The treasurer has briefly departed us, and she's usually the one to speak to OPEB meetings.
We're just touching on the OPEB article.
Yes.
Did you want to speak to the pros and cons of that?
Later, another time. I actually have a call into Chuck Patterson at Bartholomew, and we have to talk about it, whether it's going to be something that we want to have at this time or later, so we may as well wait and get the benefit of his advice.
Fine.
We can do better later. Thanks. Yep.
All right, Article 14, the Veterans Tax Work-Off Program, similar to the senior one. We found out about it last spring. Didn't have enough time to bring it to annual town meeting, so we bring it back in the fall, so that's what we're doing here. Article 15, this is the first of probably 3 CPA articles. One for $400,000 for Hopkins Academy Fields. Apparently there's going to be a request for $284,000 to paint the town hall. And then there's a possible Zaturka Park request coming. And I saw some email chatter about that. I don't have a figure.
So, all along, we've been talking about scrimping and saving, and now all of a sudden there's more asks.
This would be CPA money.
Maybe you can go over why I should care about that or not, because everything is in initials and I don't often know what they are.
Okay. Community Preservation Act. It was adopted by the town, and you can use.
I do this at work too, you're not allowed to use, just tell me what the hell it is.
That was fun.
Community Preservation Act is a blend of town money and state money.
How much of a blend?
We get a 3% surcharge on your taxes above the first $100,000 on your home. So above the first $100,000, you get 3% on top of the what is it, 213 left, and that is put into a pot of money, and that's matched. It used to be 100%, now it's down to about 20% from the state. It's matched with state money.
But they match 20 for every 100,
Yeah,
so it's not such a great match.
not such a great match at this point.
It
but
used to be.
At the beginning, they used to be. You can use it for 4 purposes: historic preservation, open space preservation, recreational, and housing, affordable housing. So the money is constrained to those 4 purposes. There's about $2 million in that account right now. We've been building it up over the years. You're on the committee.
Yeah. On the 28th, and I'll be in Washington that day. Is there a way, can I have someone else from this committee go? If they wanted
I'm already going.
to the CPA?
No, to the school committee.
Yeah, but the CPA's right after, so I thought maybe.
Back-to-back meetings.
Can you have the
Yeah.
proxy?
I guess I could do that. Once I'm out of the house, I'm out of the house.
Or could, or could could some even just go just to be there, not to
Oh,
vote,
yeah,
but
it's
just
an
to go,
open-
right?
Yeah,
It's
it's an
open,
open
right?
meeting.
Yeah, it's just an open
Oh,
meeting, time
yeah.
to go.
Yeah.
And I know for a fact that the school committee is
Just
all
going-
going over in mass,
So,
so.
yes, I won't be there to listen or
Okay, I
to be
can
there.
do that, and like I said, once I'm out of the house, I'm out of the house.
Yeah.
Okay,
Doesn't matter at that point
So
anymore.
this is segregated money that's supposed to be for those four purposes, and.
So this doesn't affect, that money's already sitting in an account that they're asking to get some money out of that
Yeah,
account?
yeah,
Okay.
there's no impact on taxes for doing this, and I would argue that if we didn't spend that money, then we're just taxing people.
For nothing, just
particular
to,
reason.
just to have a bank account?
Yeah. Which is not what.
we definitely want to use it.
Okay.
Excuse me, Madam Chair,
Yes.
I believe the treasurer has a.
Yeah, we were just talking about the CPA as a representative, and
Right.
suppose that maybe the finance committee should take a vote to have an official alternative representative, and then he could officially go.
Oh.
If that was accepted by the CPA and the select board then in turn appointed.
Yeah,
The
could that be
second.
done? Because the select board merely appointed a representative from the finance, and didn't we just ask them who they would like, and maybe said, I'll be the rep?
Yeah, so the bylaw says that there will be a representative from the finance committee. It doesn't say that there can't be an alternate.
Yeah.
What's the difference between a representative per se and someone who just goes and sits there?
You can either vote or not vote.
Oh,
It's a voting.
It's a voting thing.
It's a big
Yeah, there are
deal.
9 members to the committee.
And it goes to the quorum too. If you
Yeah.
ever,
Oh, I see,
if they
yeah.
came short one, you'd want an official representative to help make up the quorum.
Right. Now, I mean, so I had, when I first went on, I had to go in and sign in.
And so would the alternate, and then you'd have an official backup
Oh.
going forward.
I see.
So how is that different than to the school committee? Like, cause I'm the representative, that's a different.
But you're a
Yeah.
liaison, you don't have any voting rights
Yeah,
per se.
Yeah.
But on yours, you have, the other committee that you're on, what is it?
Capital
The
planning.
capital planning, that is where you have voting.
Right.
It is, yeah, it's similar,
It is just the same. Yeah.
just the same. So, is that something we wanna look
I'd
at
be,
as
I'd be
having
happy to do
backups?
that, yeah.
Yeah? Okay. So, so is it something we can just vote on here now and just,
Are you gonna be posting for next Wednesday when you meet with the select board?
next Wednesday?
The 9th?
Is that a tri-board meeting?
That's
No,
not a
no,
tri-board,
that's not.
But you wanted the select board to address a number of issues related to the October 9th, 29th, August 29th special town meeting. So I didn't know if you wanted to post or not.
If we post, we make it official, and then at least 3 of us have to show
Then
up.
the three of us, yeah.
I mean, I typically go unless some catastrophe happens.
And I sometimes where I watch it on TV instead.
Would you be able to go to select board next Wednesday?
Next Wednesday. No, I will be away.
Yeah, I usually do.
Yeah.
Sure, why not post it?
Okay, it would be better if we had that as a posted agenda item, that way nobody can complain.
Okay.
True.
Okay. All right, 617, reserved for the fire department. Okay, so this addresses a deficiency in the state inspection services for mobile food vendors. They have commercial hood suppression systems, and propane tanks are supposed to be inspected by the state. That frequently showing up at town, not sponsored, but hosted functions such as the Asparagus Festival and the Sunday morning flea market in really bad shape. So if we adopted the local bylaw, we would allow the fire department to inspect these. And
With a fee charged,
of
presumably.
course, there would be a fee charge for something like that. Okay.
Would that inhibit those folks from doing business in town? Would they
I think
just
it's
say
like-
that's too much trouble?
I think it's a life safety issue. You know, the last thing you want is a propane tank going off in the middle of the crowd.
Where are the mobile vendors in Hadley?
So it would be the Asparagus Festival. It would be at the Sunday morning flea market down on Mr. Shala's property. I think that's typically where we see them. The next one, number 18, is requested by the fire department. I don't think I'm conversing with all the issues here, but apparently they have problems with underground storage tanks for propane being improperly marked, so there's a danger of rolling over them and crushing them, which would be a bad thing. So
Would that be for commercial or residential too?
I think it's for both. I think residential in particular. And again, I'm not very conversant about this issue.
Because I would actually like more information about that, because when thinking about converting my house from oil to gas, they were like, oh, we should put a tank in the front yard. That's what they said, that would be, you know, there's a lot of space there. That would be a great place to put it. But if you're saying like,
You have to have a big sign.
An arrow.
then maybe it's not so much fun anymore.
Yeah, so I'm sorry, I don't know enough about this to be able to really speak.
I don't think people, if they did have an underground tank at their home, that they would want a big sign there.
So the next two articles are reserved for the planning board. The first one addresses a deficiency on how we do senior and affordable housing and developments. This is something that we've been working with the developer for a while. And the other one, they're working with Pioneer Valley Planning Commission to come up with definitional language for some of their zoning issues. And I don't know if this is ready for prime time, but there you go, 20 articles.
Need some more digestion here before we can vote on these.
Of course, I would expect.
Presumably there'll be much
Well,
chatter
this is
about
only
them all.
draft 2. How many do you expect?
Well, the last one went into 8 or 10, I
Yeah.
remember. So sort of like anything is good here.
We need to be posting by September 21st on this one, so.
So ages, so we got time.
Well, that's not, it feels like a long time, but it's not.
Okay,
What else do we have on our list?
let's see. Discussion of the financial condition of the town.
Yeah, we kind of front loaded that one.
That would be it. And maybe we can call it early meeting. Is there anything else that you wanted to
Well
discuss?
said.
One or two things. So it was mentioned yesterday about the financial management team, and about putting that together. Was that discussed after I left at all? 'Cause I believe right after the finance committee was supposed to.
You all voted that.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, there's a financial management team already defined.
Oh. When
Which
you guys
is-
meeting?
There was a discussion about whether or not it made sense for the financial management team to take on a discussion about possible operational cost cutting. And I was suggesting that might not be the highest and best use of their time. But I think we already voted for adopt the financial management team recommendation from the.
Good.
Yeah.
The other team that there was discussion of was between the select board and finance committee, possibly David and somebody else, to look at override options and actually sit down informally to look over options and try to put together a scheme of.
Yeah, has anything moved on that?
Yeah, is there discussion on that, or if not, can we have
I
a
think we've been discussing that on the telephone, in the hallway. I don't think we've come together. Didn't you last night come up with a plan to have 2 members of the select board and finance committee and
I don't think
myself?
anybody actually overtly agreed with me. I suggested it.
Why don't we just do it?
Yeah, I just
I
need
mean,
somebody to join me.
clearly we need to do it. I'm a little flat-footed because of all the things that have been going on, but I can bounce up to
We'd have to be
that.
happy to participate in that.
David, I'm sorry, you have 2 moms behind you. And
That's right.
Didn't bother me in the least little bit.
Tom was ready to push, but Linda and I.
Yeah, well, as the father of Benjamin, crazy boy,
Yeah.
he would have gone all the way back and had a little string to the ceiling to hold him up.
Yeah, so anybody, I'm certainly game to participate in a discussion about possible areas that
Yeah,
we can
I
look
would-
at?
I would like to participate in that sort of thing.
And so we have our two.
Yeah,
Okay, all right.
and I think that discussion will be enhanced by the information from Justin about the rollbacks.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. So how about I'll take ownership of that and work with David and figure out, what time frame might work for
Yeah.
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 That's great.
recognizing again people have work schedules, so
Well,
we need to work around.
most of the time I can get home by 7. 6 is a little dicey.
Mm-hmm.
7 works.
And Gabe has a
I mean, you
full-time day
can go
job,
on Google Maps and see if there's a red line on the Mass Pike. If there is, I'm probably not gonna make it. So,
All right, so posting for next Wednesday, 7 o'clock with the select board, and we'll, just tighten up the
it'll
agenda.
be a light week, only one meeting. All right, do you want
Right,
to
anything
motion
you
us
wanna-
out?
Anything you want to add, Ken?
No, I don't want to add anything, but I do want to ask something. I have a curiosity about, remember the rule that was, promulgated from on high about having to prevent water flowing into the river? But
Yes.
they didn't give us any money for that. So I'm just curious about what, where that stands, and what other communities are doing about it.
Right. So this is the MS4 municipal stormwater regulation that was promulgated by the United States Environmental Protection Agency and co-administered by the Massachusetts Department of Environmental Protection. And it required a 5-year plan on the part of the town of Hadley to address all sources of municipal stormwaters that would be entering into either the Connecticut River, Mill River, Lake Water, or the Fort River, from all sources. They had a deadline for us for September 17th to file a notice of intent. If we did not do that, we would be fined $17,000 per day until we came into compliance. So we raised $390,000 in order to comply for the full 5 years. 10 days before the implementation date of the plan, EPA decided to defer it for 1 year, creating a very confusing situation for us, because EPA decided to defer it for a year, but Mass DEP has not agreed to defer it for a year. There's a lot of confusion over that part as to who actually.
But the money's already raised and sitting somewhere to take care of whatever problems.
Money's raised, and there's been lawsuits filed by all sorts of people. Some people are saying get rid of the whole thing. It's an unfunded mandate. Other people are saying no, accelerate it. And we don't know where those lawsuits are going to end up.
So basically, you just have to leave the money where it is, sit tight until something
Well,
clears up.
I think we're gonna be bringing this to the select board for a full discussion to see where they wanna take this, but I think the picture for me that's emerging is that the reason for this was the cleanup of the Long Island Sound, regardless of how the current administration may feel about environmental quality. Long Island Sound is not going to clean up on its own, so this is gonna be an imperative someday. It's going to come around, and so it may be that we want to do the right thing now when it's cheaper, and we've already addressed and have the money in place to address these issues at our own pace and come into compliance with the requirements of MS4. And then when that is eventually implemented, and I have every expectation that it will, that we will be ahead of the curve.
Then you can just say, oh, sure, we did that, and that's it.
Something like that. Just a little bit of history, we did raise money we saw MS4 coming a long time ago. We raised $150,000 to address the first part of that. And then MS4 was put on hold. After a while, people said, lovely pile of money here. So we spent it for other things. And so when MS4 did come around, we had to start from scratch, and I don't want to repeat that history.
Okay. I mean, that sounds sound to me.
Yeah. So it was very confusing.
I don't remember, where did we pull that money from?
Borrowed it.
Borrowed it.
We haven't actually
How much money is authorized currently to be borrowed that hasn't been borrowed by the town?
About $8 million. And we have about $8 million borrowed, so about half of it is actually out there. And we pay about $1 million a year. And so we have actually, we had about $8 million in debt 2 years ago. We have, as of the end of this fiscal year, we still have $8 million of that debt because we pay and we put on, so it's a, it keeps moving.
But out of that 300 and whatever that number is, that number is in with the $95 that we were.
Yes, yes.
So down the road, if we didn't end up using that.
Right, we've actually borrowed $20,000 so far because there was some initial work on it, and we have, we're spreading the other borrowing over the next 5 years, but since we borrow those kinds of things in the spring, if we haven't spent any more than the $20,000 come spring, we won't actually borrow $50,000 this year, but that's in the plan, is to borrow $50,000, but we won't borrow it if we, but the authorization will sit there.
Yeah. Anything else?
Yeah, so, Member said welcome back.
Thank you.
Did we want to consider re-voting our recommendations for the August 29th articles to include Valerie? Since you were present to review it.
I'm sorry, I didn't understand the
Is that
question.
the thing that you
And can we do? And now we don't have it.
Well,
Sure.
maybe not tonight, but if we
Oh.
have time to submit our recommendations in the coming weeks, if you'd like to actually vote on the August 29th warrant articles,
Okay, then.
because we already voted while you were absent.
Right, so I'd be happy, I would love to do that, so,
Now, how does that work? Do we all have to re-vote, or can she just vote?
So,
What's the rules here?
so the
you know,
rules,
I know everybody's busy, so I don't, I don't need to do this, I don't feel like, if this is gonna be a
Well,
big hassle, I have to.
let's find out what the rules are, and then
Okay.
then we can decide.
I
Yes.
know David's got a lot on his plate right now.
David hasn't, unlike the budget, David's plate keeps getting bigger and bigger.
yeah, so the process would be that you would sit in a quorum, and you would somebody would make a motion, there'd be a second, and then you would all vote.
So we would have to all vote
Oh,
again.
so we'd have to all go through it again,
Yeah,
yeah.
so long as you have a quorum.
Yeah, I'm willing, if
So-
you guys want to, I also don't, feel the need to if it's, burdensome.
Well, I think it's that in that case, it would not just be a quorum, it would have to be all of us. If we're making an exception because she wasn't here, then someone else is not there.
Right. Then it almost looks like you're shouting for an opinion.
Right, so we would all have to be there, it wouldn't just be a quorum, we would all, if one of us couldn't make it, you wouldn't be able to vote.
Yeah, so on the August 9th, we're gonna be posting the warrant. It doesn't sound like you're gonna be able to make that meeting. But you can deliver a verbal recommendation from the floor. You can go to, when we get to the town meeting, you can say, okay, we've amended our vote to say that we're even more against it than we were, or more pro than we were. So people want to hear that. They want to hear the recommendations of the finance committee, because you are the taxpayers' representatives at the table. So they want to hear from you.
So you can't make the next meeting?
So I'm leaving on Monday, and I come back on Sunday or Monday after that.
You
And,
can,
and you have to have this done by Wednesday of next week?
well, to have your recommendations printed in the warrant.
Yeah, so it doesn't sound like this is really, we'd have to do it tonight, but Terry's not here, so
What about remote participation?
you wanna call Terry on the phone?
Well, I don't think we have the, no, you need to have some sort, she needs to be able to see us, we'd have to just Skype her in.
Well, I mean, her mother's sick, and that's why she's not here.
Okay, yeah. Well, what about it on the 9th?
Okay, so, it's on Wednesday night. I could do that. I could Skype in.
All right, I'll send around the remote participation policy so we can refresh our memories as to what that is.
Okay.
David, when will the warrant be printed with the actual recommendations on it?
What you can do on Wednesday night is you can vote to sign at your convenience. We need to post it no later than the 15th of August.
Okay. So, because James, like right now, there's a vote from the finance committee that that's amended. You want to make sure that whatever gets printed is the most recent.
Right.
And it would be nice because I've even thought of changing what I was thinking about with the fire department since yesterday's meeting.
Okay.
Yeah.
That'll kill two birds with one stone.
Yeah, with Article 3, because I really, right before you came, Molly, I think we were talking about how that will happen, and we talked about, well, maybe we'll just pass it over, just do a pass over of Article 3.
So Gabe, as you know, I'm a little tech challenged.
Sure, we can make it
So
work.
pardon me?
I'm sure we can make it work.
Okay, so I will have my computer. I do have a Skype address, so you guys can call me on Skype.
Yeah.
Okay, and what time will that be? Do we know?
Time's the meeting,
7 o'clock.
Okay,
so 5 before 7.
okay, all right.
Do you wanna have a
First
pre-run
item
earlier
of
than that to make
business.
sure you don't run into snafus?
Sure.
Okay,
So
Are you gonna
15 minutes before?
pardon me?
15 minutes before?
Or like, I mean, like the day before, just so if there's any kind of wrinkle you need to unwrinkle, you have time to do it. Like, is your Wi-Fi connection at that place solid?
It's pretty solid, yeah.
Yeah,
So-
we can email.
Okay,
All
Yeah,
right.
even lunch the day before or something, we can do a test run.
yeah, just to,
Okay, good.
All right, sounds good.
Okay, let's adjourn.
Did you have anything else?
Motion to adjourn. Do I have a second?
second.
All right.
Oh.